You're a busy professional. You don't have time for fluff. You need strategies that work, and you need them fast. Welcome to Busy Pro Fast Wellness with me, your host, Alan Welsh. We're here to give you science-backed hacks and actionable tips to boost your focus, minimize friction, and maximize your results. Less time, more impact. It's time to get well, stay strong, and thrive. Let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to Busy Pro Fast Wellness. If you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button so as to catch the episodes whenever they drop each week. If you enjoy this podcast, it would be great if you could also do me a grand favour and give me a rating and a review on whatever podcast platform you are listening on. It really helps those pesky algorithms to get the pod out to more people, and that in turn helps grow the podcast and positively impact more people's lives. Well, I hope so as well in the process. Anyway, on to the show today. And it's an unusual introduction today because I was chatting recently with my mum, and she reminded me of something that happened during my childhood that I'd sort of pretty much forgotten until recently anyway. And so when we were growing up, she had this very simple belief, and that was, we just didn't get ill. And I finished my schooling with a decade of 100% attendance. My brother and I, we just powered through. We genuinely didn't fall sick. Why? Because my mum had effectively gaslit our immune systems into believing we were invincible. She had this unmistakable, unremitting, positive mindset. We don't get ill in our family. And for all those years, my biology sort of just complied. In fact, it pretty much still does till this day, I hope. Touch wood, obviously. But looking back now, I remember thinking to myself, it's really odd that so many people seem to get sick quite regularly. Now, fast forward to today. And my mum, she's 81 years of age. She's still active, still walking, still helping her old friends do their gardens. And she still enjoys her glass of wine, red wine, every night. And still very much, she holds on to that same belief. And the opening quote for today is, "The natural healing force within each of us is the greatest force in getting well." And that was by Hippocrates. And he probably would have been a big fan of my mum for sure. Now, clearly, that's obviously not the full picture. We know that illness exists. We know the body is complex. But it really does raise an interesting question. To what extent does our mindset influence our physical health? And there's actually a whole field dedicated to this very subject, this very topic, and it's called psychoneuroimmunology, which simply put is the study of how your mind, your nervous system, and your immune system interact with each other. And what we now know is this: chronic stress doesn't just affect how you feel, it affects how your body functions. So when you're under prolonged stress, your body releases cortisol. Now, cortisol in short bursts is great if you're being chased by a bear, but for your immune system, it's a mute button. It tells your white blood cells, the very soldiers that are meant to be patrolling the borders, to take a tea break. But over time, elevated cortisol can suppress immune function and therefore make you more vulnerable. So if you think I'm just being biased because I survived childhood without a gallon of Lemsip and many trips to the doctor's surgery, let's talk about the work of Dr. Sheldon Cohen. Now, Cohen took a group of volunteers, and I'm not making this up. He actually squirted a live cold virus directly up their noses. And he then quarantined them in a hotel to see who would fare better or worse. But here's the key point. Not everybody got sick. The people with a positive emotional style, the ones who weren't scanning the horizon for disaster, were 3 times more likely to resist a cold. Even when the virus was physically inside them, their bodies didn't throw a tantrum. They didn't produce the massive, snotty, inflammatory response we call being sick. Their immune system just quietly escorted the virus out of the back door without making a scene at all. Moreover, those who were experiencing high levels of stress were significantly more likely to develop symptoms. Therefore, it wasn't just about exposure. It was the internal state. Essentially, Cohen proved my mum was right. Perception isn't just a vibe. It's a biological filter. And then we have something really quite fascinating as well. And that is, many of us know about this, of course. It's the placebo effect, where people improve simply because they believe they will. But we have the opposite, which is the nocebo effect. And that's where negative expectations can actually worsen outcomes. In other words, what you expect can influence what you really experience. So maybe my mum wasn't entirely wrong, not in a literal sense, but in principle. Because if you grow up with a mindset that assumes strength, resilience, and health, you may respond to stress differently. You may recover more quickly. You may not interpret every physical sensation as a threat. And over time, just like invested money in the index, stocks and shares, that in turn compounds. So here's something simple you can try. You might recognize this next exercise from my last episode. And I did think about doing something different. And then I thought, no, this is going to be deliberate. I'm going to do the same exercise again, because when something is simple and effective, I think it's worth repeating, not replacing. And this is a quick reset that combines the body and the mind. So firstly, stand up comfortably, your feet roughly hip width apart. Let your arms hang loosely by your sides. Now imagine that someone has gently attached a string to the top of your head, and that string is pulling your head upwards. You're not forcing your posture, you're just allowing yourself to grow a little taller. Now, roll your shoulders slightly backwards once or twice. That's it. Let the chest open. Good. Now, take a short breath in through your nose. And breathe out gently through your mouth. As you breathe out, lightly engage your core, just enough to feel your midsection becoming quietly supportive. Not tight, just active. Now, hold that posture. Tall spine, relaxed shoulders, light core engagement, and take 2 slow breaths. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. That's it. The whole thing should take less than a minute. You should now feel alert, but also calm. So why does this all matter? Well, because stress is not always about what's happening. It's about how your system is interpreting what's happening. And if you can reduce that internal noise, you reduce the physiological load. Of course, it's not about just pretending everything is fine and ignoring real problems. It's about recognizing that your internal state plays a role in how your body responds, and small moments of awareness can shift that. Interestingly, this idea of simple, repeatable habits is something I've been working on a lot recently. In fact, as I mentioned last week, I have just launched my website, which you can find at alanjwelsh.com. And if you'd like a simple starting point, you can also download a free copy of the Busy Pro Fast Wellness Playbook there as well. And I'll leave a link in the show notes as well, which means you don't have to go via the website. A little bit quicker, a little bit simpler. That's how I like it. Anyway, it's a collection of short practical tips which are drawn from the first 60 episodes of the podcast. But before I go, please consider this. Another quote. The mind has a great influence over the body, and maladies often have their origin there. And that's by Jean-Baptiste Molière. So today, just notice how you respond to stress. Notice how quickly your mind labels something as a threat. And experiment with shifting that, because while you can't control everything, you may have more influence than you think. So the next time you feel a sniffle, remember, your immune system is listening to your internal monologue. Make sure you're giving it a speech worth fighting for. This is Busy Pro Fast Wellness. Until next time, take care and goodbye for now.